Good morning, everyone. My name is John Donadio. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Association of Counties, and I'm going to welcome you to our virtual workshop on a preview of this year's upcoming general election. We have a terrific session in store for you today, but before I introduce our esteemed guest speaker, who I can't wait to hear, a couple of housekeeping things. If you have a question throughout the event, we're going to save it until the very end, and please make sure to put it in the Q&A, not the chat box if you can. Remember that, because Ben and I, if we have to communicate, or Angela Wolf and I, who does a great job in monitoring and running all of our virtual workshops in case we have to communicate, that'll be in the chat box. So any questions at the end, make sure to put in your Q&A and we'll answer them accordingly. I will speak to our guest speaker to see if we can make this available, the recording available after the event. We typically do that for our workshop, so if that's okay with you, Ben will make this available to our members and board members and other folks who didn't get a chance to be with us today. So again, with that, this is one of the more exciting virtual workshops that we have. I could probably spend the rest of the day talking to Ben about the upcoming general election. I love this kind of stuff. And I know Ben does as well, and he does a remarkable job of analyzing the data, analyzing the entire scene in the gubernatorial election. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you the founding director of the Rowan Institute of Public Policy and Citizenship, Ben Dworkin, and he's going to give us a fantastic overview of this upcoming gubernatorial election between Republican Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Mikie Sherill. So Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that very kind introduction. It's an honor to be here with all of you today. As John said, this is, for people like me, it's an exciting time. I'm a kid in a candy store. But let me tell you, the legendary English poet John Donne famously wrote, "No man is an island." And I've been thinking about that because here in New Jersey, our beloved state, we like to think that we are the exception. Jersey is unique, we say. We do politics differently here. Even our state elections were designed to be an odd number of years so that we can continue to reinforce our separation from the riptides of national politics. Alas, we are not quite the brigadoon that we all once imagined. Our national politics and our national societal trends, in fact, do shape what happens here, as we've seen over the past few weeks in the gubernatorial campaign, with charges and countercharges and lawsuits, all elements straight out of the Trump era political playbook. Perhaps even more importantly, how we respond electorally in New Jersey, how we vote as New Jerseyans for governor, state assembly, and local offices will have national implications. So what I'd like to do this morning is to focus on three areas: the lessons of the 2024 elections and how they're shaping election 2025, the competing historical trends that may also shape the upcoming gubernatorial contest, and four areas of contention. That's why I've been calling them areas of contention that we are witnessing as each side pursues victory in November. These areas these points that I want to make, they're not just academic. They shape how resources are allocated. They shape how campaigns message to local voters, and ultimately how counties experience this election. I will conclude by relating all of this to the critical role that county governments play in this great state's future, as well as the future of our nation. Afterwards, I'd be happy to take some questions. To begin, you cannot understand the dynamics of the 2025 race for governor until you break down the national politics that happened in 2024. The menu was selected last November. The meal is this November. Digging into the national exit polls from 2024, we saw some major demographic shifts. Voters under the age of 30 favored Harris over Trump by just 11 points. That's a 13-point drop since 2020. The old assumption about which party is the party of the wealthy, which party is the party of the working class, those assumptions have reversed. In 2024, Democrats actually won voters who made more than $100,000 annually. That's a 16-point swing since 2020. Against Biden, Trump lost those who made under $100,000 annually, the working class. He lost them to Biden by 13 points. Last year, Trump won those voters. He beat Harris with those voters with a 4-point margin. And in 2024, Hispanic voters supported Harris by just 5% nationally. But in the 2020 election, they supported Biden by a 33% margin. So they went from 33% margin for the Democratic presidential candidate to a 5% margin. Young voters, working class voters, Hispanic voters are all critical to the future of any Democratic Party, and Harris did worse with all of them. So why is all of this relevant to New Jersey? Primarily because Democrats had a scare here as well. Harris won New Jersey by just 6%. 4 years ago, Biden won it by 16%. Harris received roughly 400,000 fewer votes here than Biden did just 4 years earlier, a stunning drop. This was massive Democratic underperformance and is something Democratic leaders know that they have to address. And the general conclusion emerging from 2024 is that the Democratic Party focused too much on protecting democracy, too much on highlighting Trump as a threat to the Republic, when swing voters didn't care about that as much as they cared about pocketbook issues like the cost of living. This interpretation of the 2024 elections is shaping how the two major candidates for governor, Democratic Congresswoman Mikie Sherill and the Republican former Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli, how they and their respective parties are approaching the campaign. Sherill and the Democrats know that they needed a second act. Playing up their anti-Trump message worked fine in the primary, but now they have to move beyond that and talk about affordability. Trump won't be ignored by the Democrats, but instead he's going to be presented as someone who's making life more expensive for New Jerseyans, rather than someone who's threatening their freedom. That is, the Democratic message out there is to talk about affordability, but link the lack of affordability in New Jersey to Trump, rather than any other kind of threat to democracy. Now, for their part, Ciattarelli and the Republicans are now far less worried about Trump being an albatross around their neck. The president is unpopular in New Jersey, significantly so, but not overwhelmingly so. Now, on top of all of this, the election is also being shaped by a contest of two competing historical interpretations. One is that since 1988, New Jersey voters have almost always chosen a governor from the opposite party of the sitting president. The only exception was 4 years ago when Phil Murphy won re-election after Biden's victory. Though I would ask you to consider that 2021, that particular election, was a COVID election, and it made it very, very different from any other. More typically, once you had, say, Republican George H.W. Bush win the presidency in 1988, the New Jersey gubernatorial race the following year in 1989 went to Democrat Jim Florio. 4 years later, Democrat Bill Clinton wins the presidency. And then the following year, New Jersey goes the opposite way of the sitting president, votes for Republican Christine Todd Whitman, and sends her to Trenton. On and on it goes. So as you might imagine, this historical trend makes the Democratic operatives, the Democratic Party, very upbeat. Republican Donald Trump is in the White House, and now is the time for the voter backlash that will deliver a Mikie Sherill victory. Now, the other historical trend is one that favors the Republicans, and that's New Jersey almost never gives a third straight gubernatorial term to the same party. You have to go back to 1961 when Dick Hughes won the gubernatorial election after 2 terms of a fellow Democrat, Bob Minor. Seeing this historical trend, Ciattarelli supporters are giddy. The stars have aligned. After 8 years of Democrat Phil Murphy, it's time for a Republican to win. New Jersey swings back and forth. After 8 years, we're going to do it again. So with each side, Democrats and Republicans, believing that this is their year, the intensity level among hardcore partisans is heightened. As much as they help predict electoral dynamics, the fact is historical trends don't win elections. Candidates do. And the contest over candidate skills is one of 4 areas of contention that will help determine who wins this race once all the votes are counted. The other 3 areas are minority coalitions, overall turnout, and which candidate is seen as the change agent. But for now, let's focus on candidate skills. We have 2 intriguing and talented candidates, each with their own captivating story. Mikie Sherill is a Navy veteran, a military helicopter pilot, a mom, a former federal prosecutor, and since 2018, a member of Congress after she emerged from seemingly nowhere to upset a longtime incumbent. Jack Ciattarelli is a businessman, father, former county commissioner, former state assemblyman, and someone who described himself as a country club Republican before navigating his party's shift towards Trumpism. Importantly, Jack Ciattarelli has been running for governor for 10 years, including a closer than expected loss back in 2021, which I'm sure lots of you will remember. As candidates, both of these people are smart, articulate, driven, attractive, but despite their respective credentials, many Trenton observers have noticed he is much more polished than she is on the campaign trail, resulting in a candidate skills gap that has helped fuel Ciattarelli's rise in the polls since the beginning of the summer. This dynamic, I would suggest to you, is less of a reflection of her faults and more of a reflection of his experience. Look, this is Jack Ciattarelli's 3rd time running statewide. In 2017, he made mistakes, he went back with his team, and he corrected them. In 2021, he did much better. He was smoother, sharper, and he made other mistakes. And so he went back with his team and he tried to correct them. And this is the key point. The Jack Ciattarelli you see on the campaign trail today is Jack 3.0. In contrast, the Mikie Sherill you see, her first foray into statewide politics, is the first edition, the initial release. So it's no surprise that he's generating such favorable coverage based on his appearances in the same venue as Sherill. This is hardly unexpected. Now, Republicans are hoping to exploit this situation as they would call it, the candidate skills gap. He's more experienced at statewide campaigning. They think it makes a difference with voters. And this is why the Ciattarelli team spent the last 5 months, calling for more and more debates. Now, we actually have had 2 debates between Sherill and Ciattarelli this campaign season, and they've been feisty. But here's the thing. Unless you have a colossal, terrible performance in a debate, as, say, Joe Biden did a year and a half ago, there is simply no data that suggests a debate will make 1 iota of difference in the election. In the case of New Jersey's gubernatorial election, a tiny fraction of voters watch them live or online afterwards, and those that do have already made up their minds. So up again up against Jack Ciattarelli's comfortableness, his ease, and his confidence on the campaign trail, Democrats still feel good, in part because of Sherill's overall appeal. She is just likable. She seems different than your typical politician. She's unique. And to be blunt, one of the reasons is that she's not just another white guy. Now, some might be tired of hearing about her flying helicopters, but the Democratic base loves it. For them, it makes her new and intriguing. Sherill is credentialed, smart, certainly qualified, but she also has what they call in the television business a high Q rating. The Q rating is what measures how much someone appeals and connects to the audience. What encourages Democrats in the candidate skills battlefront is that people who meet Sherill almost instantly like her. And that allows Sherill, even as a first-time statewide candidate, to offset any other missteps on the campaign trail. Now, let me speak for a moment about another area of contention: minority voters. Republicans are trying to build on the inroads that Trump made last year with minority communities, especially Blacks and Hispanics. Consider Union City, Democratic stronghold in Hudson County, with an 82% Hispanic population. In 2020, Donald Trump lost Union City by 45%. But in 2024, he lost Union City by just 17%. Now, Union City isn't the whole story, of course, but it illustrates the kind of movement we saw in many urban areas. And we should also remember, one election does not make a trend. And there are, to be sure, plenty of unanswered questions. Were the shifts we saw in 2024, minority voters, particularly Blacks and Hispanics, moving towards Trump, supporting Trump, were those shifts because of an appeal by a newfound appeal by the Republican Party, or were they a result of Trump's personal appeal? Were they a result of reaction to the weak economy or the lack of vision and energy from the Biden White House? Or perhaps the result simply came about because Kamala Harris was a weak candidate? We don't really know, and therefore we should be cautious before applying all of Trump's gains last year to the next Republican who heads the ticket. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Democrats saw what happened in 2024, and they know they have a major problem if they don't address their support in non-white communities in a serious way. This is why the Sherill campaign is engaging in a very specific, very targeted outreach effort to the more marginal voting Black and Hispanic voters. This is a below-the-radar initiative, involves almost no politicians aside from Sherill herself. Rather, the party is recruiting unelected community leaders, media personalities, and influencers to make their case. Meanwhile, the Ciattarelli campaign is focused on duplicating the same inroads that Trump made last year, particularly with Black men and Hispanic men. This is a big reason why the Ciattarelli campaign has a local campaign headquarters in the heart of Paterson, New Jersey. Ciattarelli himself saw the potential of rallying these voters when he did his own self-examination of the 2021 campaign. Now, I had Jack Ciattarelli come and speak at Rowan University in 2022, and I asked him what he learned. This was a public forum. I asked him what he learned from his 3-point loss the year before. What Ciattarelli said is this, quote, "Quite frankly, and there's no better way to say it, my team was too white. I did well in the Black and brown community, but I could have done even better," unquote. In 2024, Trump actually did better, and Ciattarelli's hope is to keep those newfound Trump voters without alienating the white voters that Trump continues to lose. A third area of contention. So we talked about the candidate skills, we talked about minority voter coalitions. Third area of contention that will shape the campaign is partisan turnout. There are 850,000 or so more registered Democrats than registered Republicans in New Jersey. It's a huge advantage for Democrats, especially in these hyper-partisan days that we live in. But a lot of these folks tend to come out in presidential years and not elections like this one. The Democratic focus is to press their advantage by connecting with these low information voters, making the stakes of the election relevant to them, and thereby drawing out their base. So even though the anti-Trump message is baked in, Democrats know that they don't like Trump. They are motivated because they don't like Trump. It's baked into the consciousness of Democratic voters. No one wants to just ignore him in this elections. Democrats can't afford that. But they want to make sure that their numerical advantage is made real when it comes time for people to vote. On average, just 4 in 10 registered voters turn out for a New Jersey governor's race, which means 6 out of 10, the majority, sit it out. As a state, that's a challenge for all of us. Now, for Democrats, they would feel a lot better if that number wasn't 40% turnout this year, but is closer to 45%, which would mean about 3 million ballots cast. And they may well reach this number. Around the country, we have seen the doggedness of the Democratic base in special elections and the No Kings rallies. Further, Democrats continue to have a significant lead in getting their supporters to vote early, most prominently by mail. By the time we get to Election Day, it looks like the Democrats will have at least a 250,000 vote lead just from vote by mail ballots. Now, for the Republicans, they see about 500,000 registered Republicans who did not vote in 2021. And of those 500,000, 350,000 did vote for Trump in 2024. These are the voters that Republicans need. And this is their challenge, to motivate to these infrequent, low information voters who, by the way, tend to come out only when Trump is on the ticket, but they need them to come out this year for Jack Ciattarelli. So we've talked about candidate skills. There's a battlefront there. Minority coalitions, a battlefront there. Partisan turnout. And now the last area of contention involves each side's efforts to be seen as the avatar, the symbol, the embodiment of change, the agent of change. Now, every election is about change, whether people want it or not. In June of this year, nearly 50% of New Jerseyans told pollsters that the state is heading in the wrong direction. Both sides are trying to capture that anger and have their candidate be seen by the voters as the agent of change. For Ciattarelli, this is pretty straightforward. He ties Sherill to the Trenton Democrats and Phil Murphy, who have dominated state government for the last 8 years. The messaging writes itself. Want change? Vote Republican. But Sherill is also trying to be seen as an agent of change. Now, on one level, it's easy to do that for her because she's simply standing up against the Trump administration and what the Democrats will view as his unpopular policies. That'll certainly help. But for Sherill to truly be seen as an agent of change, she has to draw sharp contrasts between herself and the Murphy administration. And over the past 8 weeks, she has not so quietly delivered a message that she does not believe that she is a third term for Murphy's policies. First, you had her emergency powers proposal relating to energy costs. Murphy himself, when the reporters asked him, he was incredulous, telling reporters he wasn't even sure how you could make that work. The Sherill campaign had no problem with that reaction. They loved the tension between them and the governor because it demonstrated that she was different from Murphy, that she would act and lead in a different way. He didn't see a way forward. She could. And then on top of that, Sherill went in front of the New Jersey PBA, the Policemen's Benevolent Association, and repeatedly, not once, not twice, repeatedly criticized Murphy's hand-picked Attorney General Matt Plotkin for his leadership, drawing an even more of a contrast between her and the outgoing Democratic administration. And so the two sides now enter the final week of this campaign in an increasingly tight race. The lessons of 2024 dominate political elite thinking about what's happening and what should be happening in 2025. We have two competing interpretations of historical trends, one that gives the Democrats more confidence that this is their year, and one that gives the Republicans the same hope. It is a recipe that raises the intensity among partisans on both sides because it allows everybody to believe victory is in their destiny. And each side is facing off in various battles that are part of this larger war. These areas of contention involve competing candidate skill sets, building minority coalitions, generating partisan turnout, and identifying their candidate as the agent of change. We'll soon see which side is able to find an advantage in each of these areas. So where does this leave us? It's going to be a tight race, and we'll see how tight it becomes more and more as the early vote gets reported, as we see how many Democrats are voting early, how many Republicans, how many Democrats are voting by mail, how many Republicans. Over the last 2 weeks, however, 4 different reputable public polls have shown Sherill leading by 5 to 7 points. In each of them, Ciattarelli was unable to break 46%. Every campaign consultant will tell you they'd rather be ahead by 5 points heading into election day than down by 5 points. But the final poll, the one that really matters, is about who shows up to actually vote in this election. 6 out of every 10 New Jerseyans will be too busy to cast a ballot. That, unfortunately, is the true majority. So when we look at that group, the 60% of registered voters, we find that they are very, very cynical. And the sad fact for these people, these are all our neighbors, they believe that politics is broken. It's too intimidating, it's too unresponsive, it's too dysfunctional, it's too complicated. Well, if politics is broken, then what we need is for you, the people who are listening to me now, you to demonstrate the efficiency, the efficacy, the empathy of your county government. That's how we get towards fixing broken politics. In particular, as we do every fall, 9.2 million residents of New Jersey are counting on county government to continue upholding the high standards of New Jersey election operations and ballot counting, things that you have done consistently for years. As you continue to do your outstanding work, we bring back people's faith in the system. We get more people engaged, and we fix politics, thereby setting an example for the rest of the nation. And when we get to do that, we are no longer an island unto ourselves. New Jersey can be a shining beacon on the hill. Thank you so much for what you do and for inviting me today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ben. And I wrote that last part for him about the county government stuff. So I appreciate you reading that. Just how I wrote it. You are the best. I appreciate it. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A. If not, I have, Ben, if you don't mind, a question or two, as I don't see any because you did a fantastic job. But I have like maybe two more, a little bit more granular type of questions. One has to do if you see any changes in the voting by mail and early voting results that could tighten the 5% lead that you talked about in Sherill. Do you see anything trending that could make the race tighter than 5 or 6, 7% that we're seeing?
Not at this point. Look, I mean,
Okay.
the polls say, let's be clear, the polls have shown, and again, they're a week old already, things change, that she has a 5% lead. This doesn't mean that Jack Ciattarelli isn't going to win. He can absolutely do it, and he can pull this out by 2%. The numbers as we've seen them come in so far do not necessarily reflect, do not give an indication that there is some overwhelming movement that's going to shift what we currently expect to be about a 250,000 vote by mail lead for Sherill over Ciattarelli come election day. So there's nothing really to indicate there. And I think, one of the challenges for the Republican Party is that its leadership recognizes the consultants, the elected leaders, they recognize the importance of vote by mail. You are far more likely, if you get a ballot and it's there on your mantle, you are far more likely to vote than if we just waited for you to do it between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. on election day. And so by signing people up, Democrats have tried to get their base vote in particular locked in and the votes put aside. That advantage continues to play out in a lot of these legislative races, but it has an effect nationally. President Trump has chosen to talk negatively about vote by mail. And that has hurt, it has undermined Republican leadership efforts in New Jersey to try and convince people it's safe. People from both parties sit there and open it up. It's safe. It's hard to convince the base. And so
Right.
as they have done well, I want to say the Republican Party has done well in trying to catch up. They put very, very talented people and money and resources into trying to catch up, but they're still behind the Democrats in this. And I haven't seen anything in the numbers so far that is going to indicate it's going to switch.
Right. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. And I probably should have asked this question first, but you brought up the PBA, and I do see a question, but I'll get to that since I'm in mid thought and don't want to lose my train of thought. You brought up the PBA, and interestingly, at least to me, they haven't come out and endorsed a candidate for governor yet. And a lot of I don't know if a lot, but there are trade unions that seem to be all over the place. And I'll couple this, and you can answer this maybe all in one question too, is how do you think the candidates are doing in terms of mobilizing South Jersey? Even though I'm a North Jersey guy, I live in Central Jersey now. I've been adopted by South Jersey because I'm there so much. So those two questions, and then I'll get to the Q&A that we have on the board for us.
Okay, so let's start with the South Jersey question. There were two questions there. How is each side doing in terms of organizing endorsements from organizational support? And the question about just how are the campaigns doing in organizing South Jersey? I am from Bergen County. I'm a North Jersey guy who keeps moving his family down the turnpike, and so now I'm in Cherry Hill, and I am in the heart of South Jersey here. And I get it now. I will tell you, I get it. I get it why South Jersey would always have a chip on its shoulder when it came to statewide politics. And I see it. I see the dynamic and effect. And so South Jersey, which has about 25% of the population. When I say South Jersey, I'm talking about people who get Philadelphia TV. That's my definition. There are just more votes in the North. And so campaigns will make stops. They'll come through. Both candidates have done that. But we'll have to see how much the organizing is going on in terms of campaigns really trying to mobilize their vote. I think both sides are going to try. There's always a limited amount of resources. You never have enough money. And the fact is, when you have to make a call, there's more votes in North Jersey than in South Jersey. That having been said, I do want to point out that we have the state assembly is up, not the state senate. And in South Jersey, particularly in Gloucester County, where I sit now at the university, we have a handful of very competitive assembly races going on, particularly districts 3, 4, and 8. Now, both sides are putting a lot of resources into those campaigns, and I think that, as a bottom-up effort, will be helping the parties writ large organize South Jersey, particularly in those legislative districts. So that's the South Jersey part. The question about how is each side doing in organizing various interest groups. You talked about labor unions. We brought up the PBA. I think if you don't expect to get the endorsement of somebody, the best you can do is get no endorsement for anybody. And that has happened. Close races, people want to be with a winner, and there's no clear winner, obvious winner heading into this final week. And so everybody's trying to keep their powder dry and just let's see how this plays out. From a monetary perspective, because so many of these various groups, unions and other kinds, are key contributors to the campaigns, they've tried to balance them, help out a little bit with each. And so we'll have to see. I think part of the strategic decision, I certainly don't know, I haven't been on the inside, but part of the strategic thinking on behalf of various organized interests, like PBA and certain other labor unions, has been, where are we going to go to make sure that we have a good relationship with the next administration? Well, we don't really know who's going to be the next administration. And so we're not going to go too far out on a limb for either candidate.
I can ask you about 25 more questions, but I'm not going to do that. We can talk later this afternoon.
Sure.
But I have two, and these are actually very good questions. Do you foresee close results in various counties such that it may be a few days? Do you see some close election results in some of our counties at our commissioner for the commissioner races?
In truth, I have not been following the commissioner races significantly, and so I could not speak to the dynamics of any given set of races. The folks in the counties would know better than I would about how effective you'll be at counting all the votes as they come in from the different types of voting: vote by mail, early in-person votes, and actual election day ballots. I think what we tend to see is that historically, when it's a close election up top, there are close elections down the ballot, because it's, people are partisan and they tend to vote D or R or however, and as opposed to what we had, say, 30, 40 years ago, where there was lots of ticket splitting. That's much less so now. And so if this race at the top of the ticket is going to be close, as we anticipate, then sure, we should expect close races at the commissioner level as well.
Right. I mean, some of those close county races will probably be in some of those close legislative district races, particularly in the southern portion of the state. I think you might see some interesting results down there. And I have one comment, and then our last question. And the comment was that this person was a political science major and said this is a great presentation. She's in heaven. So great job, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last question is the New York City mayor's race having an impact in the northern part of the state? What, if any, are the polling differences? Seems like a second. Oh, yeah. What, if any, are the polling differences between South, Central, and Northern New Jersey voters? I think that's two questions.
That is two questions. And someone always told me somewhere in the beginning of my career, answer the second question first. I don't know why, but let me deal with that. I have not seen a good breakdown of South Jersey, Central Jersey, defined by many in various ways, and North Jersey. So we'll know a little bit more about that once we see each county, and we can kind of assess that as we go through. So I'm not even sure we've seen. I just haven't seen that kind of breakdown in the polling, in recent polling.
Right.
So I'm not sure we can really answer that yet. In terms of the question about the New York City mayor's race, it has an impact, particularly in where you had Democratic leaning, heavily Jewish communities, where the conflation between that your opponents that others are making that conflate Mikie, Sherill, and Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist, in running for New York and very much favored to win that mayor's race. That has become an issue, I'm sure, for a number of people. And these were strong Democratic areas, even in the more observant, Jewishly, religiously observant communities. These have traditionally been strong Democratic areas. There could be some fall off there. But for the most part, overall, I don't see it. I can't say it's not going to affect anybody, but certainly I don't think it's going to have a major, profound effect on the turnout. The mayor's race is the mayor's race. This one is people are pretty focused here on New Jersey. And so I'm not sure it's going to have a massive effect on the final numbers.
Right. Great. Thank you, Ben. I don't see any more questions, and we're just about out of time. So again, I want to thank you, Ben, for a terrific job, as I knew it would be. It was very interesting and informative, and I can't wait to talk to you again next week about it. So thank everyone else for being here today. We'll make sure to make this available, because Ben said it was okay, on our website. We'll share it with you. And we look forward to seeing you at our year-end summit on health benefits reform, which is something we didn't talk about, but that's a significant issue for us on December 19th at the Trenton Country Club. So we look forward to seeing you then. And thanks again, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here.